Thank you all for attending the Banking and Consumer Affairs Committee. This is the last one, we hope. We hope it'll be the final, the grand finale, the conclusion, the end game, the home stretch, the wind up, the wrap up. So anyway, we're going to get on with it, and thank you all for coming out today. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Representatives Boyd, Bricken, Camper, Faison, Haston, Lynn, Powell, Vaughn, Chairman Powers.
Here.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And the first thing we're going to do, does anybody have any personal orders or announcements today to get started? Okay, if none, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here at the very beginning. Item number 3, House Bill 1454 has been taken off. Item number 4, House Bill 935 has been rolled to 2022. Item number 6, House Bill 1330 has been taken off notice. Item number 9, House Bill 356 has been taken off notice. Okay, and now that takes us to item number 1. And, I'm sorry, Representative Johnson, you are recognized. We have a motion and a second. And you are recognized, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This paid family leave bill has been a really good bill. I've brought it before. Some things are happening. There are many more states that have passed paid family leave since started this a few years ago. And one of the states to our south, Georgia, just did that. But in doing so, I'm learning more. Some of the folks that we're working with on this bill, there's some new ideas. So I would like to roll this bill to next year, because we're seeing momentum, and we know now that one of the national organizations did a poll in Tennessee, and 84% of Tennesseans support this paid family leave. So okay. I want to get it perfect and bring it back next year.
Okay. Do you want to get on the first calendar, or do you want
Yes.
to do later? Okay. Without objection, roll to the first calendar of next year, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Okay, item number 2, House Bill 725 by Representative Potts, and I don't think he's here today, and so we're going to have Representative Powell. Yes, Representative Powell, and Representative Powell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I sign on as a co-sponsor for Representative Potts. So basically, this bill would...
Do we have a motion and a second on the bill? Okay.
Would prohibit an employer from getting the salary history for an applicant when making decisions related to hiring. And I believe we have someone who would like to provide some testimony on this piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, without objection, we're going to go out of session, and we have someone coming up front to testify. And would you please state your name and who you're with, please?
I will do it. Good morning, everyone. Chairman Powers, subcommittee members.
I'm sorry. I need to let you know you got 3 minutes, okay?
3?
Yeah.
Okay. It was 5 last week, but all right.
Yes, when we have
many of you know me.
two or
I've
more,
met,
we have 5.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Many of you know me. I've met with several of you. I want to thank you all for giving me your time to hear about the long-term and far-reaching effects of eliminating the salary history question. I am with the American Association of University Women, Tennessee. We have been fighting for equity in the nation since 1880 and in Tennessee since 1926. I think everyone understands the question at hand. When I met with everybody gets the loophole that is in asking the salary history question, that an applicant can be lowballed without any chance to defend themselves. So we have been championing this bill since its introduction in 2018, and we understand a supermajority, a trifecta state, all those things considered. So this is like an exercise for us, and I appreciate the opportunity to dance. So in 2020, the Federal Circuit Court found in favor of eliminating the salary history question. The NFIB and the AAUW and the Women's Law Project, this was the precedent-setting case, and they found in favor of eliminating the salary history question. So to summarize what the court found, it found employers who are guessing what a position will pay do not have a good business plan. Fair market value of a job can be found in 6 keystrokes at salary.com. Most Tennessee job seekers are proficient enough to determine how much they are worth, and employers have access to all this data. So it is not a burden to find what the fair market value of a job is. As for efficiency in the hiring process, Judge McKee wrote that saying this position pays between $55,000 and $63,000, does that work for you, is both a simple and clear way to not perpetuate previous discriminatory practices. So again, I take this last final opportunity to let you know this legislation would remove the acknowledged loophole in the hiring process that allows for lowballing an applicant. I think that the premise of giving your personal, private information to someone that you know can and will be used against you is not fair. And eliminating this question puts emphasis on the employer to look at things like skills, education, and experience. 19 states have already successfully eliminated the salary history question, and there were no major disasters, and no one left the state because of that. I urge you to support House Bill 725 for your constituents who are or will be looking for a job. Thank you for your time and the opportunity.
Okay, we do allow you time for questions
Okay,
or
sure.
discussion too, but the 3 minutes is the opening thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have, hold it, I'm sorry, do you want, let's take a moment, see if anybody has any questions on the committee, please. And Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Hi there, and thanks for coming today. Do you have the list of the 19 states that have already approved it?
I sent it to all of you in a link in the committee, but I can get it for you. I don't have it right
well,
now.
I'll look it up.
Okay, I'll
If
send it to you
if you have it there, if
immediately.
not, then,
I don't. Alabama was the most recent one. to
okey
do.
doke, thank you.
And 21 municipalities have done it on their own as well. So that's kind of the concern here, that if we don't do it on a statewide level, municipalities are going to start doing it on citywide levels.
Representative Lynn, you're recognized.
Does this bill apply to government, or would this bill apply to business?
It would apply to all Tennessee job applications.
That's what it seemed like to me.
The state already does the range.
Yeah.
They provide a salary range.
I understand what you're trying to accomplish, and believe me, when I, go for a job, I kind of don't want to tell them what I made at my
Exactly.
previous job, but I just don't see that we have the right to prohibit employers from doing that. I think, yeah, it'd be convenient, sure, it'd be great. I just don't think that we have the right to do that.
Well,
And so I will be a no vote
Okay.
on this bill. But I did want to ask Mr. Chairman, legal, are there other things that we prohibit? I know that there are, but they're not coming to mind right now, that we prohibit asking on a job application. I think there are, but I think they normally do with protected classes, and not just necessarily because, you just want to be paid better.
Okay, and we're already out of session, so we'll go to legal and
Jamie Shanks, Office of Legal Services. Things that are coming to my mind are similar, as you were saying, discriminatory practices and things related to protected classes.
Representative Lynn.
Such as, you wouldn't ask a job applicant, what is your skin color, what is your sex, are you pregnant, things like that, having to do with protected classes, not necessarily just because, it would be really inconvenient for me if I had to say what I made at my previous job. So I understand that, so thank you very much. I will not be voting for this bill, and only because I just think it's a little too strong arm of government
Well,
for
and
us to
that's-
do
But
that.
that's what the federal court case was about. I mean, everybody went to bat on this, and so
Okay.
they sided in favor of eliminating.
Okay, thank you. Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony and being here. The question I was going to ask was around the court case. I remember you saying something about, what did they find in that court case?
They found in favor of eliminating the salary history question that even if you don't use the information in the hiring practices, it perpetuates a discriminatory practice that could have happened in the past, and we're trying to eliminate that.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to get that clear in my mind. Secondly, in your research that you've done, have you found any information you can share with us on the economic impact this has had on families?
Well, one
Ms.
thing I
Womack.
did. Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Do I have
thank you,
time?
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I'll answer that question. One of the fastest growing poverty demographics in Tennessee is people over 65. And what they're finding is a lot of those people are women who do not have a retirement account big enough to retire on. They don't have a plan. And that's from years, it averages about $400,000 over the course of a 40-year career that a woman misses out because of previous or current discrimination.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. Thank you for that answer.
Leanne Carmack,
Appreciate
I
it.
don't think I said that, but good to see you all again.
Okay, I have a quick one too.
Sure.
Since we talked one time before.
Yes.
Just wanted to think, because I got thinking about what you and I discussed.
Yes.
And I'm actually, I have a sales job. So if we're interviewing someone for a sales position,
Yes.
for example, you're knowing what they made in their prior sales job is pretty helpful in telling what kind of a sales job that they've been
Yes.
doing. I mean, how would you get around that, or how would that be eliminated too?
Well, what the court found is you can find all that information by using percentages rather than actual numbers. So you can say, my bonus structure was 18% of my previous salary. And if it went up from 12% the previous year to 18% the next year, then you know that that's a good salesperson.
Okay, but, okay, so it would only be the bonus part, and that would be allowed, that would be found
No,
through,
the question is you provide a salary range, and you can say, does this work for you? And if the person says no, then they're not going to be a good fit for your company.
yeah. I was just thinking, if you're hiring somebody for a sales job and they
No, my
made
husband is in sales, I know.
$4,000 last
Yeah.
year, that they didn't work really hard when they were doing it, and you wouldn't have any.
And AAUW is also teaching. We are teaching 2 million girls this year negotiating skills classes, and it's online, and we offer it,
Okay,
to any of your communities who would like to offer online negotiating skills.
okay,
I'll be happy to teach it.
okay. And Leader Camper again, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your patience. I have one more question. In your research, you talked about the impact on families and the amount of money it costs. Was there any research done on the impact on minority communities at all?
Yeah, yes, it's even more pathetic. $800,000 is what a black woman loses out on, or a woman of color, and about, I think it's 1.2 million for Latinos that they lose out on.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony and research.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carmack. Thank you for coming
you,
out today.
Representative Howard.
And we are going to go back into session and go back to the sponsor. Any final comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've actually got an answer for our chairman here on the states. We have Alabama, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware. It's not a state, although I wish it was, Washington, D.C., Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. And also just wanted to clarify, this would only apply to entities that had 50 or more employees.
Any other discussion on the bill? If not, I think we're ready to vote on the bill, on House Bill 725. All in favor say aye. All opposed? No. Looks like the noes have it. The bill fails, and thank you for coming out. Thank you for your time today. Item number 3 has been taken off notice. Item number 4 has been rolled to 2022, so we're going to go on to item number 5, House Bill 1329. And we're going to roll, okay, we're going to roll it to the Hill without objection. Okay, item number 6 has been taken, House Bill 1330, been taken off notice. And so now we're going to item number 7, House Bill 1275 by Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll motion my own bill. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. My plan is to take this bill off notice, but I have gotten a lot of interest in timeshare programs. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, just share briefly, because I think we're going to hopefully look at this over the summer and consider this. And I have had some people ask me what exactly is a timeshare program, or work-share program, rather. A work-share program is an optional arrangement offered by some states. Under a work-share program, employees of a participating employer are eligible to receive partial unemployment benefits for periods during which the employer reduces their hours and their pay, even if the employees otherwise would not qualify to receive them. For states that have adopted them, work-share programs are administered by state agencies responsible for handling unemployment benefits. Generally, to participate, an employer submits a work-share plan to the agency for approval. Once the agency approves the employer's plan, the employer may reduce hours and compensation temporarily for some or all of its employees in accordance with that plan, and the affected employees may collect unemployment benefits related to the reduction. For example, instead of relying on 20% of its workforce, a participating employer may reduce all hours and payroll across its entire workforce or a segment of its workforce by 20%. The affected employees would receive 80% of their regular pay from their work-share employer. They would also be eligible to collect partial employment insurance benefits from the state to offset the reduction, at least in part. Currently, 26 states and the District of Columbia have this work-share program in place, and there are a lot of southern states here on the list, I'd point out. And, currently we saw under the CARES Act, this could have had a positive impact for a lot of different companies. And I had different business entities in my district reach out to me and suggest that, they would be interested in a program like this because they would still want to make sure that they could help out their employees. And then also this would have a positive impact on a lot of different entities because it would help them keep their taxes lower because they wouldn't be penalized for different taxes for having to lay off folks. So I think this is a really great program we should look at the state, and appreciate particularly Chairman Vaughn saying that he's interested in continue to look further at this, and so hopefully we continue to explore this and maybe bring it back next year. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this off notice.
Thank you, Representative Powell. House Bill 1274, I think I said 1275 a while ago, 1274 is taken off notice. Okay, the next bill. Let's see, we roll one to the Hill. It's going to be, did we took another one off? Okay, item number 8, House Bill 1370 by Representative Lynn. Representative Lynn, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This bill has to
We have a motion and a second.
Thank you. This bill has to do with the act of the social media companies banning or censoring political candidates from their social media platform. And I think we're still in our infancy on determining this, but let me just say that if a social media platform is going to allow political advertising or voices, it's my opinion that they really ought to allow all voices or no voices. For them to be selective about who can be on the platform really is very unfair, and especially if it comes to political candidates who are paying for the service. when we go out and campaign, and there are neighborhoods that actually say no soliciting, it is my understanding, it's been my understanding, that that doesn't apply to political speech. We can still knock on the door and leave something for the voter, because to stop the political speech, you are stopping people from learning about who might represent them in government. It's my understanding, too, that those phone calls, robocalls, don't apply to the banning of those, don't apply to political speech. People can still buy those robocalls and, call someone to ask for their vote. And giving information to the voter is really critical. There's been times when I'm knocking on doors and a person will say to me, "Go away. I don't want to hear anything. If I receive a piece of mail from you, I will not like it. I will not want anything." And I said, "That's okay, but you know what? I get that." But all year long, when we're not running for election, people often say, "I never hear from you. I never hear from the people who represent me. I never hear anything about what you're doing." And then I point out, and here we are, we're trying. I'm literally standing at your door. And this is not a lot of people, but there's some people who are like this. I've literally come to your door to talk to you about your views and how you feel about representation and what your concerns are. And I've made that effort because you're important to me. And then the voter, their mind shifts and they say, "You know what, I never really thought of it that way. I'm just thinking, I'm watching the ball game and I don't want to be bothered." And I would say, "I apologize, I didn't realize it started yet." But for these social media platforms, I do think what we've seen has been very egregious. We are in our infancy in determining, what can the government do about the censorship of political views, because political views are very important. They have to do with people's freedom and their welfare. And I think, Mr. Chairman, we need to just let a little bit more time pass to see how all of this is shaking out. But I personally will not go on a social media platform that is engaged in censorship of political voices, because I just feel it's wrong. And I don't care if it's my friend, Leader Camper, who's the opposite party of me. I don't think she should be censored. And I don't think anybody in my party should be censored. We need to let people know what our political views are, because they will be deciding who represents them. And as I said, we're in our infancy. We haven't worked all this out yet, so I would like to maybe put this on the first calendar next year, because I have a feeling a lot more is going to shake out between now and then.
All right, thank you. And we will, without objection, we're going to roll this bill number 1370, to the first calendar of 2022. Thank you. I had a funny story about knocking on doors. I went to knock on a door one time, and they had a big sign up before the front door, and it said, "Trespassers will be shot." And then right down below it, it said, "Survivors will be shot again." So I did not knock on their door. I just kept on going. Representative Lynn.
Now, it is my understanding, if the neighborhood says no soliciting, you actually, as asking for the vote, you can actually still go ask. It doesn't mean you're going to receive a nice welcome. You might want to reconsider that. However, also, when there is a no trespassing sign, that is the sign you do not cross. Never, ever cross that sign. And I give these instructions to all of my volunteers, so.
I agree. Thank you. And, okay, we're going to go on to item number 9 has been taken off notice. We'll go to item number 10, House Bill 1467 by Mr. Representative Garrett, our whip. And Representative Garrett, you are recognized. You have a motion and a second, and you're recognized, Mr. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is what I refer to as the Tennessee Information Protection Act, and I doubt you've heard about it. So what I'd like to do is explain a little bit about what the intent of this act is.
And we have an amendment. Let's
go ahead and
put
put
it
that.
on the bill. Okay. What drafting code do you have on that?
Well, that's a good question. There's only one, I believe. Which ones do you have?
6055, is it what you have?
That's the
Okay.
one.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the amendment and a second. All in favor of the amendment say aye. All opposed say no. Okay, the amendment's on the bill, and then we're back on the bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. So let me explain a little bit sort of the origin of this particular legislation. There are several states that are looking at how we protect your consumer data. That data can be as simple as your email address, your telephone number, whatever you use to log in to a social media platform or an app that uses a social media form, et cetera. So there's been a lot of discussion about where this bill originates. Some would say it's a California bill, some will say it's a Florida bill, but I have taken a look at all of that legislation and combined it. So one thing I want to kind of stress to you is this isn't coming from one particular state. The reason why some may say this is a California legislation is a lot of the definitions, like a biometric data, which I didn't know what that was until I dug into this legislation about 2 months ago and figured out what that is. Some of the definitions certainly come from the state of California because a lot of these companies that do this type of information, do this type of sharing, do these apps originate in Silicon Valley in the California area. And there's legislation traveling across this entire state to protect consumer data. So what does that mean? Well, all of us have these devices, these phones or iPads that we use here in the legislature, and we go to certain websites, certain apps that use your data. And as it exists right now, that data, there are no laws, either federal or otherwise, that would protect how that data is used by that particular company to target what they want to do to market you to other apps, to other platforms, to transfer, to sell that data. There is nothing right now that says what they can do, what they can't do, what they can disclose to you, and how they use that information to allow whether or not you want your data, your email address, your IP address, your facial recognition technology, your thumbprint, all of this that you're giving to these companies to use their platform. There is no requirement on their end on what they do with that information, how they use it, how they protect it, and what they're supposed to do to allow whether or not you want it to be sold, transfer, or et cetera. So what the intent of this legislation is, and what there's a lot of questions around, is who does this apply to? How can we make it focused enough for the companies that do this to make sure we don't capture things like a pizza company that may be in your districts that collect data for their marketing purposes? The intent of this legislation is not to attack or to make companies, small to medium-sized companies that collect data for their own marketing purposes, that would be subject to this. Because why? They're not selling that information. Their revenues primarily aren't from the transfer or sale of data to make sure where you go, what your digital footprint may look like, to capture that and then sell it to someone else. So the intent of the scope of this is really to capture companies that you use when you use an app on your device, on your phone, and that app shares your information with another app. That company that owns that app, they get kickbacks. They get paid for what you use that particular app if they shared your data. That is unknown to you. That is unknown to your children. That is unknown to your grandchildren. That's unknown to your grandparents on how they use this information. One thing that has come to light over the past week, this is, and by the way, this isn't directed at one particular company, so don't take this example as this is directed just to Facebook. Facebook does a really good job on what they do with their data. In fact, they don't want their data. That's how they operate their business. They use your digital footprint to target things when you go on Facebook to know what you're looking at the next day. So they don't share that data. They just tell companies that, hey, this person is going here. You might want to do an ad because this is where this person is going to go tomorrow. They're not sharing that person with that particular company. But over the past week, I may have read where Facebook had someone hack their information. So 500 million consumer data was put on the internet. Now, that data was fairly old, but what does that mean for those consumers? How is that data protected? What does that data look like? Whose is it? This is what this law, this Tennessee Information Protection Act, is designed to protect. So, right now, there is nothing in this legislation that directs or addresses what a company like Facebook, if this should happen to a company, what are they going to do with that information? How are they going to tell the consumers that use that platform that that information could be out there? Now, in all other sense of the word, I don't know if you remember when Equifax and those folks had all that data that hit, there was a big hacking. They let their folks know. There was federal law that covered that. There is nothing in this legislation that would cover what a company should do if there's a hacking like that on how they should tell the consumers what they need to do to let them know. So I haven't worked on a piece of legislation over the past few months as much as I've been passionate about protecting our kids, yours, your grandparents' information on how they communicate, because these devices are becoming so commonplace. The iPhone was invented in 2007. They invented the App Store with the little mini iPods before then. That's when music really became a sharing mechanism for electronic data. What we now use these phones are probably every day, every minute of our lives, of how we pay our bills, et cetera. So the implications of this law is big. I recognize that. The stakeholders that I've worked with for the past couple of months have been nothing but fantastic. They've given me feedback on who needs to be exempt, how we need to narrow this law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way down the line of how we can make sure who we're supposed to capture to make them subject to keeping the data private. So with all of that, my intentions today, because I want to work on a particular piece of what happens if this consumer data is out there and hacked, what the notification requirements be for the consumer. So what I hope to do is put this on the first calendar of next year and get legislation, work with more stakeholders, get as much feedback as I possibly can, because I think this is needed. One thing that I have not received for feedback on this legislation is that the legislation is not needed. It just needs to get there. And so I am more than willing to work with you all next year, work with the stakeholders to make sure we can get legislation that I know you and your districts will be 100% confident in, and 100% that we can protect this data for consumers. So with that, if it's okay with the committee and the chairman, I'd like to move this to the first calendar of 2022, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any at the committee's will.
Okay, we have Representative Lynn. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your remarks, you're talking about biometric data and consumer data. Are you talking about protecting both of those and treating those equally? I came across last week, Amazon's palm reading starts at the grocery store. It's a palm reading. You put your palm over to check out at the grocery store. So they have your palm identified if you were willing to do that. And I do think that I want to research it. Maybe you know, if we protect, we make sure that businesses protect Social Security numbers. They can't share those, I do believe. So why not have, say, you know, sort of a Bill of Rights for your biometric data? It's protected. It is protected because certainly if my palm is connected to my credit card, a lot of nefarious things could certainly happen. So I guess I have a couple of questions there, but I am talking about biometric data or consumer data.
Sure.
Representative Garrett.
Both are covered under this particular act. Biometric data is defined, and it is defined as, it can be as your retina scan, can be your palm, thumbprint, your facial recognition technology. That is defined under biometric data, which is included under the definition of consumer information. So that is actually part of what this particular legislation is supposed to protect.
Okay, and we have Vice Chairman Bricken. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, a great presentation, fascinating. You have your work cut out for you. My question generally is along those lines. All the stakeholders, I mean, do we not have with some resources in the state that you can draw upon consumer departments. I'm not sure where they are in the state, but, I mean, don't get me wrong, it just seems like this is big legislation, and you're going to need some help to get it to the point where we can move it forward. So, I mean, it would be far more than I can handle, so I just didn't know who you're going to draw upon over the next months to get it to the point where next year we can move on it, so.
Did you have a comment
Sure.
on that? Okay.
Chairman Brewer, thank you for that, and that's exactly why I wanted to not so much take my pedal off the gas, because I'm going to keep my pedal on the gas as fast as I possibly can, but I think over the next 6 to 8 months, I am going to reach out to those groups that you just mentioned to make sure we can come up with legislation that targets the folks that we need to target, so we don't capture anyone that shouldn't be subject to this law, because the last thing that I want to do is cause our small to medium-sized businesses and some large businesses that wouldn't apply to this to have cost associated with complying with the statute. That's not my intent, to raise the cost. There's been some conjecture out there that the California law costs $55 billion worth of cost for companies to comply with this legislation. That is not in my intent. I'm very aware of the issues that this may present to some companies that this is going to comply with, that will have to comply with the law. But I want to make sure those targeted companies that should be subject to this particular legislation are the ones that we're trying to reach. And that's the challenge. But I am more than willing to put in that time and effort to make sure we come out with a law that I hope most, not everybody's probably going to like it, but most of us will, and get to that point sometime in early 2022. So, thank you for that.
Okay. Representative Powell, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate, your intent here and what you're working on. Just wanted to also say that hopefully we can, consider law enforcement into these discussions, because a lot of times we've seen where law enforcement and those trying to prevent, say, terrorist activities have been able to go in and see what people's search history might be on through different companies, and then trace that back to either try to stop an event from happening, or deal with those individuals after the fact in prosecution. I'm sure you're aware of that, but I would just also say I do think, hope to include law enforcement in those discussions, because I want to make sure that sometimes that information can be very helpful to them that these companies are collecting, for them to prevent those types of activities from occurring.
It's a very good suggestion. Thank you, Representative Powell. Very good suggestion.
Any other comments, Representative Gary?
Mr. Chairman, I'm through.
Okay. Without objection, we're going to roll this to the first calendar of 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee.
Thank
Appreciate
you. And next on the calendar, we have one that we rolled to the Hill, and it was item number 5, House Bill 1329 by Representative Harris. Representative Harris, you're recognized. Do we have a motion on the bill? We have an amendment filed by a committee member, and so we want to go to that first and get a motion and a second on it.
Motion.
And what the code,
Sure, and so
you-
this is a friendly, the
I need
drafting
the
code is
drafting code, please.
6816.
Okay, that's what we have too. So we have a motion and a second on the amendment, and you are recognized, Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, without objection, because this was a late file amendment by a committee member, but we have no objection. We're going to go ahead and accept it, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that. This is a late filed amendment, but I was in discussions with my colleague here and about this piece of legislation. I think, and he can explain more about what he was trying to get at with the bill, but his desire was to send this to a TASER study, and that's what this amendment does. I know he's met with different members of the committee, and we do want to kind of understand how this Presentment Services Act and the fees associated with it have continued to maybe rise or increase or maybe even decrease. But it'd be good to study that and then see how that's been done in this state as well as some other states. And so all this amendment does is basically just amends his bill to send this to a TASER study, and it's a friendly amendment.
Okay, and let's go ahead and vote on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and let's go to Representative Harris on the bill as amended.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Representative. So this bill would prohibit payday lenders from exceeding a 36% annual percentage rate on the unpaid balance of the amount financed. 36% is the cap on annual percentage rates that by federal law you can charge a veteran. So this original bill before the amendment was made to just put the cap in place. Payday loans have become the face of predatory lending in America for one reason. The average interest rate on the average payday loan is 391%, and that's if you pay it back within 2 weeks. If you can't repay the loan, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says 80% of payday loans don't get paid back in 2 weeks, then your interest rate soars to 521% and continues to rise every single time you can't repay the debt. Compare payday loan interest rates to the average rate for alternative choices like credit cards, which is a 15 to 30% rate, or debt management programs, which is 8 to 10% rates, personal loans, which is 14 to 35% rates, and online lending, which is 10 to 35% rates. However, payday lending loans average 391%. Nonetheless, research by the St. Louis Federal Reserve shows that more than 12 million Americans, mostly poor consumers without access to credit cards or bank loans, instead turn to payday lending to solve short-term financial problems. In 2019, they borrowed $29 billion and paid an astonishing $9 billion in fees to do so, according to the Federal Reserve. In my district alone, we went from one payday lender to 23 in the last 10 years. Federal law caps the APR for veterans at 36%. Predatory lenders have been swindling consumers for a long time. Both federal and state government have taken notice, and 38 states now cap the APR at 36%. We are one of just a handful of states that allow payday loan companies to do as they wish. So that is the gist of what this bill does. However, so that way I can get, I kind of learned quickly how to count the votes, so that way I can make sure that this actually goes somewhere and we actually have a conversation, true conversation about how payday lending affects our state specifically. I would love to send this to Tasser if possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, so let's go ahead and take the vote. I'm sorry, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Okay, look like the ayes have it, the way I heard it. Did we need to take a roll call? Okay. Yeah, it looks like the ayes have it, so it's going to go to a Tasser study. As you know, I think they only study 3 per year, so we'll get to look at that and then kind of go from there and just say good luck with that. And Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one thing that to my fellow colleague from Shelby County, there was one word that was mentioned in your presentation there that I would hold off on, and using the term swindling to describe someone's business that is acting lawfully under the rules of the state. That's a little bit of a backhand towards that industry, because we don't know what the risk that these companies take on people with with less than desirable credit scores. And so until swindling seems to be a fraudulent activity, and it is a legal activity. So I would just hold off on that in future presentations, just for what it's worth.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have another comment, Representative? And I concur with Chairman Vaughn that when you're looking at doing that to try to, because and one thing, as we live in capitalism and a free enterprise system, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity, and if they don't like the rates at one place, they can go to another. So when you're talking about that type of situation, they can always go to another place if they feel that somebody has an incorrect rate or a rate that they think is predatory type. I mean, they sign a contract, so everything's above the law when they're doing this. But maybe a Tasser study, all of that'll come out and kind of give us a better idea of what to do. And so without objection, it's going to a Tasser study, and then it'll be, okay, I'm sorry. I thought we had another amendment number. But anyway, thank you for the presentation today, and good luck on the study. Okay, do we have any other comments or anything before we close the committee for the year? I just want to thank you all. I want to thank legal. Jamie has done a great job, and we really appreciate Jamie Shanks, and then our research person, Ben Voitis, and our clerk, Heather Vandergrift, and Maura Vaughn, no kin to Kevin Vaughn. Thank you for helping us out, too. So we want to thank everyone, and we are going to close the committee, and it's subject to the call of the chair. Thank you.